Hello and welcome to another episode of the Career Reset podcast. So I feel like it wouldn't even be my episode if at the beginning I didn't apologize either for the sound being bad or for me being sick. So I haven't yet heard this episode back, so I don't know about the sound quality, but I am feeling a little bit sick like I have for most of this year. Any parents of small children listening to me, can you please tell me if this is ever gonna end? Am I ever gonna be fully healthy again, or is that gonna happen when my child is like 15 years old? And she's not even in daycare yet, so I don't even understand how is that possible that I have been the most often sick I have ever been in my life. And it is very exhausting because typically I would keep postponing like doing things, especially for my business, for when I feel better. But this year has taught me that that time may never come. So here I am recording this episode, feeling sick again, and thank God for the possibility to edit these episodes so that I can edit out when I'm coughing or blowing my nose. And that is one reason why I'm not yet ready to hand this task over to any external freelancer, even though it's taking so much of my time to edit these episodes. But nobody needs to listen to me blowing my nose 60 times a minute. So I'm still doing that myself. Just a little update. And if you also have had that this winter you have been battling with the never-ending flu and similar sicknesses, then I am sending you well wishes. We are here talking about careers mainly, and obviously you need to be well enough to think about some career changes and career moves. But this year I've been talking quite a lot of showing up even when you're not physically or mentally at your 100%. That time when everything else in your life is going well and you are at your peak health, that may never come, or it may come in a very in a long time. So sometimes it's definitely better to ask yourself, am I well enough to sit up and open my laptop and try do something? And if the answer is yes, then my personal recommendation is to just go for it. And that's how I have been approaching this year as well. There are times when I am just too sick and too exhausted to get out of bed, and then I listen to my body. But then there are times when I would prefer to be in bed all day, but I know that I would just spend the day feeling sorry for myself and thinking how sick I am and poor me when all I have is a flu. But then when I actually get myself up and have a cup of coffee and record, for example, a new episode for you guys, then I know that that day will be just much better spent, and at the end of it I'm gonna feel better. So other than that, I have been very busy with starting a lot of new processes with new clients, which has been really exciting. And now I'm getting again to the point where I really need to keep track of where I'm at with each client. And also it forces me to be a bit more on top of my game with being organized, because chatting with my clients, coaching, recording these episodes, I can do that all day long. But when it comes to the actual back end of my business and keeping track and staying organized, that is still a work in progress. So just to show that you do not need to be perfectly organized. And for this and next week, I am still fully booked. I'm not opening slots for new intro sessions with clients or for starting to work with me if you're interested in that. But then from April onwards, hopefully my kid will start daycare and I will finish off some of my current processes. So if you've been listening to these episodes, if you've been resonating with what I say, if you follow me on LinkedIn and the topics I talk about, they just sound like that's very close to the topics you are wondering, then I recommend you reach out to me as soon as possible. You can fill out the form in the show notes or send me a message, send me an email so that I reserve you a spot for a free intro session once I open the slots, because this time of the year I get typically the most demand, because people want to secure a new job before the summer, and then they want to go on holiday and enjoy the vacation knowing that they will be starting in a new exciting job. So I just want to make sure that if you want to explore what working with me would be like, if you're interested in hiring a career coach, seeing what that would be like, then we can schedule a free intro session sometime in April and see how I might be able to help you. And because I have experienced quite a high demand in my services this year, then I just want to make sure that you are not gonna miss out. I have had to turn down a few people or postpone the start of our collaboration. And I know that when it comes to job search and careers, like you need to act as fast as possible because new opportunities are opening, but also being filled every single day. Recruitment processes are taking a lot of time. So the sooner you start taking action, the better. And that's why I also always keep you updated in what's my situation and when I'm taking on more people. So check out the form in the show notes. Let me know briefly where you're at, and I'm gonna send you a calendar link where you can book a free intro session. Especially if today's topic resonates with you, that's what I work on with every single client, because that's something I feel like most people are not very good at. And the topic of today's episode is selling your experience. So this is very common. One of the most common struggles my clients tell me is that they don't know how to sell themselves. They tell me, Carolina, I don't know how to sell myself. I really struggle with that. And it's a bit funny expression because you are not standing somewhere with a sign by me. But what we are talking about is basically the ability to communicate your experience, your background, skills, competencies, all that in a way that is attractive to potential employers, and how you communicate that in your CV, in your LinkedIn profile, in your applications, in the interview, like throughout your career. It's an absolutely essential skill in order to actually move forward. And most people are not very good at this skill because most people are not very good at sales. Most people don't really like sales, which is fine. Like, not everybody needs to be a salesman, but we need to be able to present what we have to offer really well to the job market in order to get into exciting jobs. That's just how it is. So that is why I thought I want to record this episode today. There is one thing from when I did my coach training, one sentence my trainer told me, which stuck with me to this day. And that was, the problem is never the problem, which sounds really weird. Let me elaborate what that actually means. So when people tell me, I don't know how to sell myself, how to sell my skills, that kind of sounds like the problem is lack of skill or lack of understanding of how to actually package what you have to offer, some attractive bundle that you can then present to potential employers. But what I have found by doing this work for years and years and years is that most often the problem starts even before that. So in order to sell something well, you need to be really confident in what you are selling. And this is truth for all different types of sales. How do I know that? Well, I used to work in sales. I've told this story many times, and I used to be really, really bad at it. It was a type of sales I do not particularly enjoy. I think nobody enjoys this type of sales. It is not the type of sales I do in my own business, and that is cold calling and cold emailing, which is not even a very effective way of sales. But why so many companies do it is that it is very cheap. It is very expensive to pour money into ads, into elaborate digital marketing funnels, but it is very cheap to hire a few interns, give them a phone, give them a list of phone numbers and tell them, start calling. And I did not have any proper training to actually do this type of sales, but even more importantly, I did not have a kind of a inherent belief that the solution the company that I worked for was selling would really make a big difference to the potential clients that I was calling. It was a relatively small company that did not yet have a big track record of a lot of success cases. The solution they were providing was still kind of work in progress in many ways. And I just knew it would not really transform the way they run business. It would just help them to do things a little bit differently. And so because I did not have the confidence that this is going to change their entire business, then I could not really make the other side confident and interested and willing to take out their wallet and pay for this solution. But then, because right now in my own business, I do all of my sales, I do not hire any external people. I didn't hire a bunch of interns and didn't give them phones and a list of phone numbers. I find all my clients and I run sales discussions with them where they decide to work with me. So like provenly right now, I'm good at sales. I have been practicing it for a while. But the other thing is that I now deeply, deeply believe in what I'm selling. I love what I do. I believe I'm really good at it. I have a lot of success stories. I really click with my potential clients and they are able to resonate with what I'm saying, and the whole sales experience is enjoyable. It's that they are not under any pressure or anything like that. But that has not always been the case. When I started, when I was having my first discussions, I wasn't very good at it. Again, partly lack of skill, but mainly lack of the confidence, lack of evidence that what I'm actually offering, I will be able to deliver. So to bring that back with where most of my clients are at, is that their main problem is not that I would need to tell them this is exactly how you are supposed to sell your experience, but that they inherently do not believe they have a lot to offer to the job market. And I want to talk about this a little bit more in depth, that what are the reasons for it and why is it so crucial to start there. Because I feel like often people approach job search or any kind of career discussion that they just put the information on the table, on their LinkedIn profile, on the CV, and they hope that someone will see the potential in that someone will see the value, that the person who created the application, who wrote the CV and so on, does not even see themselves, which is hard to impossible actually. So that's why you need to start there. If the potential employer doesn't see that you're confident in what you have to offer, they are not gonna be confident that you will bring value to the company. It never is like that you like the confidence, but somehow the employer is able to see it there and offers you the job. And I have talked about this in the podcast episode, how to move forward in interviews, which I think I recorded 3 episodes back or something. If you haven't listened to that yet, then definitely give it a listen, because I talk about there that the confidence is one of the main pieces, that it's not like that you need some elaborate skill set to succeed in interviews. Most commonly, you just need to work on your confidence, which is very easy said and not that easily done. But I will try to talk about the tools that I use with my clients to help them grow the confidence. I think there are 2 common reasons why people lack the confidence, which makes it hard for them to sell their experience. One is what they think the job market expects, and one is negative past experiences. And I will try to keep track of my thoughts here and touch on both of these here. But if we start with the expectations of the job market, most people's careers that I work with, and that may be you who are listening to this podcast, are somewhere in the middle. You are not a total beginner. You already have a few years or maybe even more years of experience under your belt, but you are not yet someone who spent 20 or 30 years really building up your skill set in that field. And being in this kind of middle, for many people, is a really hard place to wrap your head around, so where you're actually at, because typically you are in the situation where you're good at something, you're not really good at everything, and in many areas of our lives, people don't like to be in the middle. We think very much like black or white, 0 or 100. If I'm not a total beginner, but I'm not the biggest expert, then what am I? That is a very confusing place to be in. And when we are talking about selling your experience, we think that you need to be like the best of the best, even though realistically, like, we know that you don't need to be the biggest expert in your field, but many people just inherently think they don't have that much to sell. If I put it in the simplest way possible, that okay, you have some experience, you did some jobs, you did okay in them, but that there is really nothing that employers would jump over the fence to offer you jobs. Basically, that's the best way to summarize it. But I mean, the thing is, employers are not most of the time looking for the biggest expert in the field. Most employers don't have the budgets to pay the biggest expert in their fields. Most employers are looking for people who can get the job done relatively well, and then it depends that some employers value if you can do the job really fast. Some employers value that you can do it super well and without mistakes. Some employers value lots of different other things. So people just believe that the fact that they did their job and they did it relatively well, that is not a good enough basis for selling that in your CV. But I mean, if I look at it from my perspective, okay, I worked as a recruiter, not for very long, for about 1.5 years, which means I can do recruitment. Okay, I have a proof in my CV that I have successfully recruited people. I worked in an agency, so I worked with different companies. So my experience, I could sell it to some mid-level recruitment role. I have some ways where I was, for example, better compared to my colleague. Like, I tended to be really fast. I was able to get interested candidates relatively quickly into the process. And that is something certain companies would value, and not something every single company out there would value. Or if I talk about me being a career coach, I have been offered jobs to work internally as a career coach for different organizations. Even without applying to these positions, I just got contacted on LinkedIn. And I have worked full time in my career coaching business for less than 3 years, which again is not a ton of years of experience. I have really good success stories of helping people get into jobs, helping people change fields, helping people be happy in their job, which I personally value the most. But I am not the best career coach in the world. I'm not the most experienced career coach out there. I am also not the most expensive career coach out there. So, but the thing is that I don't need to be that. I do not need to approach or think of my experience that it's only valuable if I'm the best of the best in something. I think my value comes exactly from the fact that I am simply good at what I do, and I have identified the area that I'm really interested in and that I'm very good at. And there are different aspects of career coaching. It's a very complex job, and I'm definitely not excellent at all of them. So my strength, what my clients benefit from the most, is that I can help them make the right decision about the actual direction they should pursue in their career. And I can do that really quickly. So people would come to me that they have been struggling for years to figure out what they actually want to do. And within 1 or 2 sessions, I can help them narrow it down to a clear enough direction that they can actually pursue. But then my track record of helping people get jobs is not 100%. I mean, if it was 100%, then my prices would be a little bit higher if I could with 100% certainty guarantee anyone that by working with me, you will get a job. It also, of course, doesn't depend fully on me. I'm not the one in the end sending the applications. But because I have identified the things I'm good at, typically the things you're good at and the things you enjoy are kind of go together, and that's the things that I'm then selling to other people. And I could be here dwelling in why not every single person who has ever worked with me gotten an amazing job. I could put my focus there, and then what would that lead to is that I would feel really bad about myself, and I would be at home hiding. I would not be promoting my services and trying to find new clients. And I've been in the same situations with jobs. When I got into a bit of a despair and I started thinking that I'm not really that good at anything and other people are so much more experienced, and this job got 200 applications. I'm sure there is like 10 people who are much more qualified than me, and that was a very negative place to be in, a really bad basis to be able to sell my experience and just a really bad place to do anything. But nothing like externally was wrong. It was just I was putting my focus on the negatives, on the things that I don't have. And I see this often with my clients when we review a job ad and we are deciding if it would make sense for them to apply to that job. Then they will go through the list of requirements, and there could be like 10 requirements, and they will point at one specific and say, yeah, but I've never worked with this software. And I said, well, okay, but the other 9 you are meeting exactly, like to the dot. So what is more valuable, that you meet 90% of the criteria of the job, or that you don't know how to use one software that probably would take a few days to learn? And I don't want to diminish it. When you have requirements in a job ad, it doesn't mean that every single one of them is equally important as the other. You will always have in a job ad something like you're able to work in a team, you are able to communicate well, but those are not going to be the decisive factors on who will actually get invited to an interview and who is not going to get invited to an interview. But then there are certain points that are like hard skills, actual experience with that type of work, in that type of field. And the people who do have this experience most likely are gonna get invited to the interview, not those who write in their CV, I'm a team player who can communicate well. It's always better to use some critical thinking, or even ask the company, ask the recruiter that, okay, if you have never touched this software that they are mentioning, is it even worth for you to apply if you otherwise meet all the criteria? But what I'm trying to say is that often people don't have a very objective overview. Often people have a bit of a tunnel vision of focusing on the things they are not doing well, the things they are lacking, the skills they don't have, and so on. And then, of course, you don't really feel like you know how to sell yourself if you only think about the things that you haven't yet done in your previous jobs. So to keep on this same example, then when you read the job ad with a bit more open eyes and you consider all the aspects equally, then you can spot that there is 1 or 2 things, it doesn't need to be everything, but 1 or 2 requirements that you like really have, that you have worked, for example, with the exact same type of projects that they're asking for. And then instead of like trying to somehow address all the 10 requirements half-assedly in your application, you really build your application around you being an expert in that one of the requirements that they are asking for. And that in the end will draw their attention much more than you talking like, well, this I have done a little bit, this I have some experience with, this I have used in my studies. That is not attractive. Nobody will reply to that and invite you for an interview. But if you are able to position yourself as an expert on few of the things they're asking for, then everything else can be taught. So that's a common source of why people struggle trying to sell their experience, is that they try to be kind of a bit of everything, that you try to talk about how you are reliable and who you work, but you don't really go in depth on the things that you genuinely are really good at. Typically, companies nowadays are not looking for people who are mediocre at 20 different things, but who are really good at 1 or 2 key skills, because that's the point of a company. You have dedicated people to dedicated tasks, and ideally everybody is really good at that one task. It doesn't make any sense to have 10 people and all the 10 people are doing a little bit of each of the tasks the company needs to do. That is something that I need to do in my business, because I am only me, I don't have anyone else, and I definitely do things that I am mediocre at. My whole marketing processes are sufficient enough that they get me clients, but if I was a bigger company and I would need processes in marketing, I would definitely not be good at that. And I would, even though I now do marketing, that actually takes a lot of my time, I definitely would not now apply to marketing jobs, and I would really struggle with selling myself as a marketing professional, because I know I'm not that good at it. I can do it if it's needed, like it is in my business, but there is no point in me trying to build my profile around becoming a marketing professional, and that's not who I want to be even, which ironically is another common what I see with my clients is that they will send me their application materials for a review and it just does not sound very attractive. And they could be talking, let's use this example, they could be talking about their experience in marketing. And I tell them, you know what, this just doesn't really shine. You're just describing things you did, but there is no passion, there is no excitement in it. And they tell me, well, yeah, because I'm not really that excited about working in marketing. And I say, well, then we need to, again, the problem is not the problem. We need to go a bit back and actually look what field would be exciting for you, what kind of area you would be excited to sell your skills in. And it doesn't need to be your existing background. As I talked about my experience in recruitment, it would be really hard for me right now to sell my profile, sell my experience as a really good recruiter. Main reason for that being that I don't want to work in recruitment. Yes, I have that experience in my CV, but that doesn't mean that it would be easy for me to get a recruitment job if I don't actually have a passion to work in that field. And that is something that I can spot immediately, and employers can spot it also. If you're just applying to jobs because they would somehow be in line with what you have done before, but there is zero interest and passion showing through in your application, you are just listing it like a shopping list, then that could be the reason why you are not getting invited to interviews. And that is something that I cannot teach anyone, how to sell your skills for some field you don't even want to do. I cannot teach you how to sell the skills you don't believe you have. And what comes to mind related to this is that sometimes clients submit to me CVs for review. The experience they are trying to sell is just not that interesting to begin with. Let me explain. So, for example, very early in my career, I used to work as a teacher, a language teacher. I used to teach English and German in a language school in Prague, in companies. I don't need to explain much more what that job was about. You can probably imagine that I was preparing lessons and then I delivered them and I planned how to teach people English and German. But then when I was trying to get out of that job and into doing something different, I could sometimes try to do it by trying to overinflate what that experience was about. So instead of explaining it for what it was, I would say in my CV something like, I prepared learning strategies to tailor lessons to students' individual needs. Each lesson was like a little project to me, and I had to keep an eye on the deliverables and timelines and budgets for that lesson. And I thought I was being super smart, that I am fooling the recruiter by making it sound like this experience was actually some like a super business project manager Carolina, but they could see right through it. And then when I was a recruiter, I could see right through it as well. Here in Finland, people typically while they are already in high school, they have some kind of summer jobs. Either you do something like you're selling ice cream, some kind of basic service job, or if you have a good network, meaning like your parents or friends of your parents are working in some company, as a bit of a charity, they're gonna let you be there, do pretty much nothing, maybe scanning some papers, organizing some folders, so that you can have some work experience in your CV and earn some money for yourself. And this is such common fact that nobody really lets these summer interns do anything impactful, that then when I see a CV that says that like when you were 16, you were doing some highly business critical administrative tasks in your 2-month summer job, I just know that that is not the truth. And maybe one last example. Here in Finland, there are some really big business and startup conferences. And of course, these conferences require lots and lots of people to actually help make that conference possible. And that is done through volunteering. So lots of students or people who are, for example, in between jobs at the moment are hired to help out in the conferences. And they are like 2 days. And maybe a bit of prep needed before and after that. And it is definitely a good experience. it's better than nothing. And I think every single, for example, student should go through that experience at least once. But then I would not necessarily put this kind of experience, like you being for 2 days at a conference, working in the cloakroom, I would not maybe put that in the CV at all, or I would not put that like ensured smooth transition of people from their coats into the seminar hall. Like it was a 2-day conference. Nothing you could have done there would really tip the scale in the direction that you are now the expert of working in conferences, for example. So when it comes to not being very good at selling your experience, sometimes it's about underselling yourself, but sometimes it's also about overselling experience that everybody can tell right away that it was not something that would really stand out, basically, to put it that way. Which again brings me to my original point, which I'm hoping I'm not going far away from that much, that your experience does not need to be the world's most impressive in order to be seen as valuable. So typically, if you worked in a job and you were able to do that job well, you were able to do that job fast, efficiently, you were able to consider lots of different aspects, you were able to get your projects done according to the expectations, that is experience worth selling. That looks attractive in the eyes of employers, even though you don't have 25 years of experience of delivering projects on time, even though you have just 2 years of experience of delivering projects on time, that is seen as attractive to certain types of jobs, not maybe to CEO jobs, but to some kind of level that is in accordance with your level of experience. That is just good enough. So just to sum it up, in order to sell your experience, you do not need to be the best of the best. You can just be good enough, average. And then the second thing that I see quite often that prevents people from selling their experience, from communicating about their experience in a way that is attractive, is some kind of negative past experience. And this could be in the job itself. For example, your job title sounded quite fancy, but the reality was that you did very basic job. It could be that you didn't get very good feedback from your boss. It could be that you were laid off for reasons that were not related to your performance, but to the performance of the company, basically. It could be that you feel like you were not put on very exciting projects, that other people in the company were working with much more exciting clients. And those are the things that typically you know, but the recruiter doesn't. And it is a question of whether that information is even relevant to the employer. So again, let me give you an example of my recruitment experience. So because reasons I will not discuss here, I wasn't typically put on the most exciting clients the recruitment agency was working for. I was usually working for companies that nobody has ever heard about, roles that were really difficult, and so on. I have that information. Like I know what the others worked for, what kind of projects, what kind of companies, and what I worked on. But in the end, that doesn't really matter. What matters is that whatever the project I was given, I approached it the same way. I find the candidate, I interviewed them, and I recommended the best to the client. That's it. And I could approach it from the way of trying to hide the fact that it was not the most exciting companies, or feeling like that experience was then like less than. But in the end, it doesn't matter about the circumstances, about the environment. It matters what I did with what I was given, basically. And obviously, there were cases when the recruitment just did not go to plan, but that was never because of something that I did or did not do. It was often just the decision of the client to not proceed. And if I talked about this in my CV, nobody cares. Like it would just be completely irrelevant information to write there. Often it happened that I started working on a recruitment, I got interested candidates, I interviewed them, but then client called us and said, we actually don't want to hire anyone. What does that tell about me and my skills and my suitability to a potential job? Nothing. It just tells about the client that they realize they suddenly don't have a budget? How would that be in any way relevant or interesting to my potential employer? Or with my experience as a career coach, if I was now applying to a career coaching jobs, there were times in the 3 years of my business when I did not have any clients. Like my marketing and sales was not very successful, and so I did not have any active clients. That doesn't mean I'm a bad career coach. That means that at that point I was a bad marketing and salesperson. And as I have said previously, I would not be applying for marketing and sales jobs because those are not the areas where I thrive. I can do them on a good enough level to keep my business going. But what actually matters to anybody wanting to hiring me as a career coach is that when I do have clients, when my good enough marketing and sales kick in and I work with clients, they get really good results. They are really happy about that experience. And that is, again, what matters. And that is what I draw my confidence from. So I acknowledge my gaps in marketing and selling, and I'm actively investing and working on improving those skills. I am not presenting myself as that I am someone who excels at marketing. I am someone who presents themselves as I excel at career coaching. And again, excel doesn't mean that with every single one of my clients, we 1000% exceeded their expectations they set of the program. So it's a lot about reframing your past experience and thinking about what actually matters going forward. Everybody's career nowadays is a little bit messy, and it depends what kind of narrative you give it. I could easily say that my career to this point has been a sequence of failures. Because I never got promoted and I never had my own team and I never was a manager. Or I could just as easily present it as a success story because before I was even 30, I started a business in a foreign country and I got it to a successful place where it comfortably supports myself. That is my measurement of success. And both of these stories could be equally true, but it just depends which narrative I choose, which narrative I choose to tell. And you can do that with your career wherever you're at. You can look at your past experience and you can ask yourself, how did it all went well? And you can just as equally ask yourself, how did it all went wrong? And for each of those questions, you will be able to find answers. And that's what I'm trying to say, that it's not about deciding whether you're a success story or failure story. It's about you deciding that there are things you can do well, there are things that you're good at and that would be valuable to potential employers, and then you just focus on talking about these things and you ignore everything else. That is the formula to selling your experience to potential employers. And I could easily end the podcast here. If you just take that one sentence from this podcast, then you have gotten a lot of value. But I would like to touch upon a few other aspects. And one of that is that in order to sell anything, including your experience, you actually need to have, so to say, potential clients that are interested in listening to your pitch. And that is something that most people are just not investing enough time in. Because of course, like, one way to sell your experience is to apply for a job, but then you are entering a very, very competitive environment in this job market. Like, you are competing with other people pitching themselves, basically. But then when we think of the alternative, it's you building the audience that is listening to what you have to say, and that is potentially gonna offer you opportunities. If you have listened to a few of my episodes, you are not gonna be surprised with what follows, and that is building your network and building your personal brand. That is the inherent way of actually selling your experience, by actually having people to sell your experience to. Writing a very salesy sounding intro paragraph in your CV is not selling your experience. Building your network, talking about who you are, that is selling your experience. Sharing your expertise on LinkedIn, posting on social media about what you have to offer, that is selling your experience. And that is the way to stand out of the crowd, to completely exit that extremely highly competitive space that is the current job market. where it's not about you offering more than everyone else, but you offering something someone actually needs, that someone spotting that you're offering what they need, and that someone contacting you with an opportunity that is directly related to what you have to offer and what you actually want to do. So if you aren't currently spending any time building your network, meeting new people, deepening the connections with the people you already do know, sharing about your expertise on social media, in a newsletter, on a blog, in a podcast, anywhere, then you are not selling your experience. Tinkering with your CV, that is not selling your experience. So maybe that's a bit of a plot twist of this episode that you did not expect. And if you wanna just really explore these ideas in more depth, if you really feel like it's time to take another step in what you are currently doing in your career, in how you are trying to get to your next role, I have a lot of episodes on this podcast that are introducing some of these ideas. I have a podcast about how to be active on LinkedIn. I have a podcast about strategic job seeking. So those are definitely the starting points. But if you are not seeing the success you want in your job search, in your career, and if you think the reason is because you're not able to sell your experience really well, then I would agree. But I would maybe want to challenge that the way you're thinking of selling your experience is having a really strong CV and LinkedIn profile, which is definitely important. But in this job market, in this day and time, it is not enough. And the people who are really getting into the exciting careers, they are doing these next level activities. They are building the audiences to whom they then sell their experience. So what I want you to take away from this episode is, number one, wherever you are in your career, whatever you have done, wherever you have worked, you have something to offer. Some company out there needs exactly what you have to offer. Your experience is not going to be impressive to everyone, to every single company, to every single employer. That is impossible, and trying to chase that will only make you feel really bad about yourself. Focus on the things you tangibly do well. Focus on what environments, what jobs, what industries would actually value these things, and then just communicate about it as it is, what you really have done, what you really have to offer, what you even want to offer, and forget about everything else. And whatever has happened to you in your career, whatever situation you have been in, that does not inherently define who you are, what you have to offer, and what is possible for you in the future, unless you let it define that. Unless you walk around the world with a lot of baggage from your past jobs, from your past experiences, and you can feel like it has clouded your confidence and your own judgment of where you are. In that case, I would really recommend getting in touch with me and scheduling the free intro session, because that is exactly the topics we will dive into, because that is a blocker that unless you process that, you're not going to be able to move on, and it's really hard to process that just by yourself without the outside perspective. So as I mentioned in the show notes, you will find a super short form that you fill. You let me know where you're at, I send you a link, you book an intro session, and we are gonna get straight to work. I have worked with people at so many different seniority levels in different industries, and at each of these levels the challenges are remarkably similar, but the challenges are also solvable. I have not yet had a person working with me or reaching out to me where I would say, no, you are doomed. There is no chance. There is an exciting career for you out there. There is an exciting career out there for everyone. And it's just about building the right strategies and tools to first understand what the right career is for you and making a plan on how to actually get it. So I hope you all feel much more confident and ready to go out there and sell your expertise, your skills, and all that you have to offer to potential employers. Let me know how you enjoyed this episode, and let me know what other topics you would like me to cover on this podcast. And I am looking forward to talking to you in the next episode.